definitely impacting. People are hearing us. It's happening.
Mm-hmm.
So, welcome, Kyle. Why don't you tell me a little bit about you and what's important to you and what you're doing about it?
Yeah. Hey, Danielle, it's lovely to be here and to see your face and to chat and reconnect. A little bit about me. I am a nature connection mentor. I facilitate transformative experiences in nature, and I've been doing that for almost a decade now. And yeah, connecting people with themselves, people with their community, and ultimately connecting people with the earth is very important to me. And what am I doing about that? Well, right now I'm in a phase of cultivating my own practice. I live very seasonally, and I'm fortunate enough to have put myself in a position where I can work on all the things I talk about, all the things I teach about. I believe in them and I practice them. And it is hard to be a facilitator and a practitioner. And have set myself up in a way where I can separate those two, and I can be a practitioner. I can go deeper. I can explore these different topics and ideas that I'm interested in. I can cultivate myself in those practices so that when I'm facilitating from a place of like deep knowing and experience versus kind of like regurgitation or just putting out some propositional knowledge and facts that might be helpful or useful.
Awesome. So, you feel like telling me more about facilitation and what's important to you around facilitation and let's talk wilderness therapy / adventure recreation, bringing people, guiding people in these. Let's talk facilitation.
Yeah, I actually had a really good chat last night, and I'm in a dialogue group, and we engage in a practice called philosophical fellowship, in which we kind of like read a quote, and we spend 3 hours just pulling apart this quote. And the essence of the quote was from Plato, and the quote was, everything he says and does, he says and does for them. And it was in reference to a leader or a king or a captain of a ship. And as a facilitator, that is the ideal of what I'm doing, is everything that I'm doing and all of the crafting and intention and planning is not for me. It's not for me to show how much I know or how smart I am or what I've learned. I'm doing all of these things to bring people into deeper connection with themselves. I'm doing these things to help bring them alive, to help them generate insights. I'm like doing all of these things, not for the recognition, not for any other reason than to be of service, to provide people with experience and opportunities that I both wish I had, and at the same time were also given to me and allowed me to affect really positive change in my life. And my hope is to just do that for others.
Yeah. Servant leadership. That reminds me, that's the term in this my teacher, my outdoor behavioral health care, learning outdoor behavioral health care. One of them, his thing was, or theirs was, and it was actually in our course on philosophy of recreation.
Mhm.
And at the time I was in university, I was studying political science,
Mm.
public health, and I was a post science honors major, and I needed to get I had so many credits that weren't valued that I ended up getting a double major in recreation. But the cool thing about recreation, what I realized is I don't want to spend my time arguing and fighting politics.
Yeah.
Recreation has, you have this opportunity, and what they believed in the program was that through recreation you can have you create solutions for people. But in our the 101, recreation 101, and philosophy of recreation, we learn about servant leadership and facilitation, and it's about being of service.
Yeah, and which is in some ways like very much the opposite of a lot of our Western leadership. We tend to look at like bosses and CEOs and admire them, and they tend to be very like top down, you know, making their decisions based on the bottom line versus like the integrity or value of their employees, right? I really like Gary Vaynerchuk's kind of a hilarious guy to me, because he actually is like you think they work for you, you work for them,
Absolutely.
because you are nothing without your employees. Like a
Mhm.
captain of a ship is a useless without, you know, all the other sailors. And I
Mhm.
think if we can take that mindset and kind of weave it into more of our corporations and even like our mom and pop shops like that, yeah, when the goal is money and making more money, it's hard to um allow, yeah, more kind of like or deeper value to be created.
Mhm. Mhm. I'm thinking of more of another, um, one of my, I'm talking about myself a lot. I realize I'm not as I need to gain a little more, some more skills here, but here I am. So um this I worked as an intern at let's just swap stories. I'll tell one and then you tell me.
Yeah.
Okay. So I worked as from the recreation program, I worked as an intern at Shunda Treatment Center in the Rockies in Canada, in Alberta. Small treatment center, but they have a lot of turnaround with just because of the field that they're in, working with youth 18 to 24 years old, um, through the judicial, and then eventually it was through the healthcare system. But
Hmm.
um, anyways, Jeff was the director of Shunda, and he actually their organization won an award for outdoor behavioral health care in that year. But anyways, um, your leader, his relationship with the facility, the clients, definitely clients are equal in that setting. You're sharing in a circle. Um, you eat together, you give thanks together. There's no differentiation between, there is, obviously, there's a power differential, but every effort is made to be
Yeah.
on the same level. And then staff, he works for the staff, and the door is always open. You're always available to hear their needs. And I've had other bosses in that field that are similar, but I definitely have had leaders of a team who are not that way.
Yeah.
And it's terrible because people just go like flies and they wonder why.
Yeah, it seems like it would be like natural and intuitive, but it's like very much not. A lot of people think that they know best, or like that their way is the right way and only they know how to do it, and you need to do it like they would do it. And it's just not the way the world works. Like, there's so many ways to do something, and you being locked into your way of doing is just like, it's kind of like ignorant.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying not to talk bad about certain people that I'm currently working with. So I'm like, well, over there. Yeah, I'm like, oh, I hope they get it. I really hope they get it soon.
Yeah, and it's one of those things too. It's like you can't really tell anybody. You can like it can only be modeled, and it can only be like self-actualized. Yeah, and like I was lucky enough to have really good models, like not growing up, but where I was working kind of early on in my career. And then yeah, my continued experience of like self-cultivation, and like, digesting these quotes that are, thousands and thousands of years old, and like learning and reimagining. And again, like I don't think of myself as an expert in anything. Some people might. I don't. I'm very much like a beginner. I do, offer like what I know and my experiences, and like at the same time, like I have that confidence in knowing what I don't know. And at the same time, I know that I don't know a lot of things, but I'm not gonna let that hold me back from doing. Like I still know a lot, and I still have a lot of skill and ability that I can present and bring forward. Because if I wait till I'm a master, then I'm just going to be waiting forever, So finding
Yeah,
that balance.
I see that. I'm this week with sharing practices that I've learned and bits and pieces. Kind of, in the interview you had with John Vervaeke a few weeks ago, or maybe it was a few months ago, but I saw it a few weeks ago or last week. The ecology of practices. So if you want to have diversity in your movement, you want to have diversity in what you're learning, you want to learn from different perspectives, different backgrounds, and then chain of where do you take that to being a teacher, or so I do see people who are don't like you to break tradition, and I value tradition, and at the same time there's this stiffness that can come down from, oh well, I need to know who their teacher was and their teacher was and their teacher was, and there's a strict like martial arts, for example, right? Or yoga practices, like, oh well, you can't do this because they said this and that, and it gets to be almost like in the field of or like Bible Christian stuff, they'll call it there's a word for it when they're
Dogmatic.
Calvinism, or yeah, there's this type where it's legalism. That's the sort of what I've seen as some American Christian language, where it's you're saying legalism, and it's a term to kind of be rude about people who are so strict with their, it's like fundamentalism, but it's slightly different. It's being attached to the thing having to be this way because it was I don't know,
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. I think that's like
Mhm.
like also I would call that like dogmatic.
Mhm.
That this is
Mhm.
the way that it's done. And well, why do you do it like that? Well, because it's always been done that way. Well, why is it being done that way? Because that's what we were taught. All right. You're in this kind of like cyclical explanation that doesn't allow you to question things. All right. But it is through this questioning and this curiosity that we're able to expand. And ultimately, like, we're really like, for me in my practices, like I'm looking at all of these other practices, all of these other ways of being, I'm trying them out, doing them in different ways. And what I'm looking for is like, what is the through line? What is the thing that these things share? What do they have in common? What are the relevant lessons that they can offer? Right? Like when you're helping people to find the doorway, like there's so many ways to do that. Like as a mentor and as a facilitator, there's so many different styles, so many different approaches in both how people receive information and how to give information. And that's one of the big problems with our school system is we have this very dogmatic, like top down, like propositional knowledge, like fire hose. And we're expecting people to get the information, retain the information, and apply the information. But we already know that like some people are more experiential, some people are more like hands-on, some people need to like listen to it, some people need to read it, some people, there's so many different ways. So to expect that any way is the way is just not true. And there's plenty of examples of that.
Mhm. So I like seeing, thinking, feeling, wondering, this sharing of knowledge and passing down knowledge. And school, I just wanted I'm going to plug in this idea of um reading academic study about, written in America mostly, a little bit of Canada, a little bit of, but in English, about Haiti, for example. And they don't have an education system, or people are, I guess you need to follow my train of thought. So let me slow down.
I'm tracking.
You are? Great, great. So you brought up our school system, and what is school? And what is knowledge, and like being able to pass down this knowledge? And we have so many assumptions of what that is. We are part of our society of proper education. And I guess where I was going with Haiti is, I kept reading when I was in school studying and trying to learn about politics and health politics and health policy. And they were just so rude and derogatory about the education in Haiti. And then on that same trip of me looking and searching for truth in there, there's this deep value of parenting and education in Haiti that is around more so learning by doing. And I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with that, but
Yeah, I mean,
uh,
that's like what I hear in that, like learning by doing. And I really like John's example of the four different ways that we can know something, right? And we live in the tyranny of the propositional. where it's like, it's all about what do you know and what can you say that you know, and like propositional is just all facts. Like, oh,
Mhm.
we know that 70% of people do this, or like, you know, this study said this. Like, it's very propositional, it's very like science oriented. But there's all these other ways of knowing, right? There's procedural knowing, like knowing how to do something, right? And each of these different ways of knowing all have a different memory, a dedicated memory area of the brain associated with them. So your propositional knowledge is stored, you know, differently than your I think propositional is like semantic memory, procedural is procedural memory, perspectival is episodic memory. There's all these different ways, right? Like, how do you know how to be in a relationship with somebody?
Practice. That would be the practical application of
Right?
it,
By you
which is the
only
only one
know,
that really matters, in my
yeah, well,
opinion.
exactly, right? You only know by participating in the relationship. But you could, like, if I gave you a bunch of procedures or a bunch of propositions, like, hey, like if you want to be in a relationship with somebody, or, you know, it's like, you know, how do you act on a first date? You're like, okay, well, you want to talk, but don't talk too much. Well, you want to be funny, but not too funny. You want to be like charming, but well, not too charming. You want to ask questions, but you don't want to ask the wrong questions, right? So you can't give somebody like a procedure or a propositional knowledge of a experiential thing. I had this the other day. My buddy, he's like, hey, I watched this YouTube video, and we can do these fences like this. And he's like, this is the procedure. Well, when we started doing it, it turns out it was hard as shit. And it wasn't as easy as just do this, this, and this. We were getting participatory knowledge and perspectival experience of what is it like to be me at this time in this field with these tools, trying to do these procedures. Well, we figured out we learned a lot in that, despite having the steps we were supposed to do. Well, we turns out we had to do these different things because we didn't have these tools, and our fence was like this. So yeah, so a lot of people want to discount the participatory experiential, but actually that's probably the most important.
That's great. I'm glad connect that to coming back around to, as an educator too, like this idea of, or whatever, you don't even have to call it educator. Let's not even say educator or teacher, but facilitator, whatever. You have some role of leadership with these people that you can participate with them, which is awesome. And you don't want to stand up here, and you have to pull in the reins a little sometimes, and there's a place for putting up your boundaries with them. And did I lose my train of thought? No, I didn't. It's there. Improv and intuition and following through. So like, sometimes you want to share this passed down knowledge with people, and you do, but you also need to speak their language and work with them. And then there comes a point where you need to be creative together. Like, that's kind of where I'm going with that. Like, you have to be adaptable and creative as a group, and if you're just following your list of what your master said you could do, or checking the boxes to keep your license, you're going a little far out there, but you're missing the present of the, I don't know, that it's kind of exciting. It's the exploration, it's the real, it's the, yeah.
Yeah, it's the dynamicness of life, like, like a prescriptive approach to solving people's problems just doesn't work for everybody. You're like, okay, cool, well, you have weak knees, so you need to do this exercise. Well, it's like, based on that person's life experience, like maybe they need to develop fast twitch muscles or slow twitch muscles. Maybe based on their neurology, they do better with high reps and low intensity. Maybe they do better with high intensity and low reps, right? It's like, I can't just take this cookie cutter model, right? And
It
just
depends. Yeah, it depends too what they did that day and what they're going to do tomorrow
yeah, for
and
sure.
what they want to do.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. There's so many factors to consider. And really everything, like in all aspects of life. And, we want to make things efficient. We want to make them scalable. We want to make them repeatable, right? We want to like formulate and become formulaic in our approach. Like, oh, I figured it out. This, and this. Okay. Well, it doesn't work for me. Well, it worked for these 5 other people. So you must not be doing it right. So try again, do it better. And you're like, well, maybe it just doesn't work for me. Like, you know?
my teacher, one of my teachers at that when I was doing outdoor recreation at Western, and I did the internship that I talked about earlier at Shunda and the Rockies. My teacher was Keith Russell, and he helped kind of coin this term outdoor behavioral health care because he's involved in stuff and he's a researcher. But one of his things is FIT, which is kind of funny, I think. Decided to call it FIT, which is feedback informed treatment. And this is such a, oh my God, what a great idea. You actually pay attention and build your treatment based on the feedback you get from the people. Whoa, great idea. Who would have thought? But anyways, I'm being rude, but my point was just like, yeah, feedback informed treatment. So, but there's also, this, it's good to have structure. It's good to have a plan, but it's also good to have a backup plan and a whole bunch of extra tools, because when you get out in the field, you're not necessarily going to know what you're going to actually need. And
Yeah. You have so many variables, from the weather, from the hunger, the thirst, the emotional state. Like, I mean, yeah, I relate that to like wilderness therapy. It was like, me and my co-lead, we'd kind of like wake up and make our coffee and just like sit in that beautiful silence. Cause like, we're like, as soon as we wake these kids up, we have no fucking idea what is gonna happen. Are they gonna get out of their tents? Are they gonna be in their tents? Are they, like, you just don't know. And so you have to be ready. And again, yeah, I think feedback is really important, like for everything. Like, that's a lot of people value feedback in these kind of like mechanistic ways. They're like, okay, well, I tried that, it didn't work. I adjusted it, kind of worked better. I adjusted it, it worked better. But when you try to bring like feedback into like the office place, like people get so triggered. You're like, hey, can I give you some feedback? And they're like, oh, like, what did I do wrong? It's like, well, it's not that you did it wrong. It's that I actually want to help you do it better. Or I want to let you know how you're being perceived or how you're impacting people. And it's just part of a relationship. If we just are in relationship with no feedback and we think everything is fine when really it's not, all right, the longer that goes on, the like bigger the crash is going to be.
and I think, yeah, this idea of making sure, I don't know. I don't know if I can get into it all. I was just thinking of, okay, so treatment, where to draw the line between therapy and growth, and do we need to? And like in the, yeah, I was taught that um um there's basic recreation, there's education, there's growth recreation, and then there's therapeutic recreation. And there's a distinction. And I think, and there are certain organizations or main goals are one of those four. And like that's how your licensing and your insurance and where's the funding coming from, what are you insured for, what are you legally allowed to do, you depends on your category.
Mm-hmm.
So I was always interested in therapy, and then now, like, having been involved in therapy for a while, I'm like, no, fuck that. I'm not your therapist, right? And but like I guess I fit more in like the growth, I guess. But even still, the growth to me has a little bit of a it's like a economic upper status thing potentially. Like it's almost
Mm-hmm.
like a luxury.
For
And I
sure.
don't like that idea. And then yeah, pure recreation is like hedonism or something, but it's not. But some old patterns of work hard equals being a good person make me think that pure recreation is hedonism, but it's not. I know it's not
Mhm.
rationally, but
Yeah, I would just like approach it like what is again, what is the through line between all of those? Like what is the goal of all of those things is connecting people with nature, connecting people with themselves and connecting people with their community. Because
mhm,
ultimately, like therapy is a result of disconnection,
mhm,
right? When you
mhm,
feel disconnected and you feel like you don't have purpose and you feel like you don't have meaning in your life, then you can fall into like anxiety and depression and some of these like mental health things,
mhm,
like seeking.
mhm,
And in order to grow, you need like motivation, right? We need like, you can't just be like, grow, do this thing. You're going to grow. You're like, you have to create the motivation. And sometimes the motivation is those connections. Again, like I want to
mhm,
be on a
mhm,
team. I want to feel connected to these people. This is what the team is doing. Like, okay, like, well, then when I'm on a team and I feel connected to myself because I'm offering like my gifts and my skills, right? And when I'm recreating, it's kind of like the lowest like level of connection in some ways. It's just like, yeah, I'm out here in this beautiful place, like enjoying being here. Right. So at all levels, right? Again, that's why like I'm really interested in the through lines. Like, what are the like we have all these religions, what are the commonalities? We have all of these movement practices, what are the commonalities? What are the like principles or what are the kind of like deeper like foundations? What are the like the fundamentals that allow anybody any one of those things? You know, like yoga and sports and movement, they all have a thread of like strength, flexibility, proprioception, balance.
mhm,
So if I work on those skills, I can be good at all of those things. Like
mhm,
I don't do yoga, but I can show up to a yoga class and crush it. Like I don't
mhm,
rock climb, but I can go rock climbing. Like I don't put myself in any one of these categories. I train myself to be capable at the fundamental level so that I can participate in any one of those things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I have some, like, I have a discipline that I love and I'm dedicated to, and I'm going to do till I'm 100, I hope. And then I dabble in other things. And I know, like, yeah, I've been doing this Kalari, which I love, and it's great. And I know that I won't be able to learn certain things that I want to learn until I put in 10 years
Mm,
to some degree. But I'm not going to do that right now. Like, it's not like there are more important things in my life right
yeah.
now. Mhm.
Yeah. And then within that, you have, again, like the prioritization of the many things that we could be working on. Like, yeah, like I can't, like, if I get, the stronger I get, the less flexible I get. The more flexible I get, the less stronger. The more skill I develop, the less I'm, like, you have to, pick and choose. And I mean, I kind of look at, again, like this, I try to be very efficient. So I look at like the Pareto distribution, like what is like the 20% that gives me the 80%,
Mhm.
right? Like what are the minimal effective doses of different
Mhm.
things? How can I structure my time to be moving in multiple directions? But ultimately, like right now, like I'm injured. Like I had a partial tear of my ACL, and I'm doing a lot of rehab, but I can't do any parkour. I can't jump, I can't run, can't like do any of these things. So now I'm taking that time to focus deeply on my nature skills, right? I'm like tracking cougars and following wolves through the woods, and I'm working on my hand drill fire, and I'm building shelters, and I'm just like really cultivating these other aspects of myself, taking that similar mindset. What is, all of these things? What is the through line of all of those things? How can I cultivate these principles? While, okay, I'm spending less time on movement, but I do have to spend some time because I need to rebuild my leg so that I can hike, so that I can do some of these nature things. So they're like all kind of inter-affording, interpenetrating each other. And that's, again, the optimal thing, but I can't do all of those things. I have to okay, focus energy. Okay, this next 3 months, I'm focused on tracking and fire. Okay, next 3 months, okay, I'm going to be focusing on like education and facilitation. But then, like you said, I have my like non-negotiables. I'm jumping in the ocean every day, like first thing, right? Like don't have to think about it. Like I'm meditating like every day, like I'm journaling, like those are the core of the core that allow me the energy to do any other of the things. So
Mhm.
there's like, yeah, that kind of like web of like, okay, here's your core, here's like the basics.
Mhm.
And that allows me to do some of the basics of this and some of the basics of this. But then as the further away I get from the basics, the more like focused attention I have to give that thing, right? Like you said, like you're not going to be able like to develop something unless you dedicate not just a lot of time, but a lot of quality time to that thing. And when you do that, you sacrifice other things, right? Whether that's making money, whether that's learning a skill, whether that's spending time with people, whether that's sleep, right? You're always kind of sacrificing something.
Mhm. I wanted to bring us to this idea also, and from what I learned in school, or it was introduced to, is and I know you practice that way. Like I know I saw you facilitate and teach that way. I experienced it. what the idea of working with everybody's different strengths.
Mm,
Just like if a disability, like 1 out of 6 people are disabled in some function at all given time. That's life. So how do we work together with that? And it really is like, yeah, having relationships in general require compromise and sacrifice.
mm,
And yeah, this really, yeah, there's an important value within the recreation world that I was introduced to for the disabilities movement, and that just recognizing that we all have something to offer at any given moment. And that's why going out in a group in kind of a kind of the unknown of the wilderness or nature, or like with all the variables or elements, or because you have to come up with a solution together too, and you learn from each other and you help each other, and yeah, and you just discover that everybody has some different um, strengths, and you need them and you use them all.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've done a bunch of survival trips, and I will tell you that surviving in the woods on your own, like, mostly sucks, right? Like having to get the food, build the shelter, harvest the water, make the baskets, like get firewood, chop firewood, start a fire. Having to do all those things on your own is like a shitload of work. And I think there's value in knowing how to do it for sure, but it is way more enjoyable and way more sustainable and effective to divide and conquer and to do that in a group. Like, cool, you like building shelters? You're stoked on building a shelter? You guys are going to build a shelter. Like, oh, you like to hike and wander and like look for food and resource? Like, cool, you do that. Like, oh, you're big and strong and you want to carry a bunch of shit? Like, cool, go and do that, right? Like, we can employ and empower these people, because like there's a lot of things I don't want to do. Whether I'm good at it or capable of it is like beside the point. Like, I also just don't want to do it, right? So finding those, like, anybody who wants to do it is going to already be better at it than somebody who doesn't want to do it. And yeah,
Mhm.
sometimes you need people who are like planners and strategic thinkers, and you need some people to step up and just like do shit. And you need, everybody in between. Like, all those energies are essential. And then you need somebody who can kind of conduct that energy as well, right? Like an orchestra, if everybody just like went for it, like it might just be like, horrible noise. But you have a conductor who's like, they're not the most important person. They're actually like, without all, like, they don't make any sound, right? So again, they're hopefully in service of knowing how and what to do. And then the other people have to know how and what to do of their job. And then there has to be this like trust. Like, even if you fuck up, like, okay, well, I trust, maybe he didn't mean to call on me, but he called on me. And even though it's not in the music, I'm going to trust that he's doing that very intentionally for a specific reason. So even though it's not in the music, I'm going to play it. And then you play it, and then you find out, you're like, yep, like there was something that happened and we needed to go here. Right. So there has to be that trust, like in my students, like when there's like bees, I'm like, okay, there's going to be a moment where I'm just going to be like, you need to listen to me. And it's very important that you listen to me. And it's not a time to ask questions, right? Because there's a danger. Like, I just stepped on a bee's nest and I need you to just run with me right now and know and trust that I'm doing this like out of integrity. And then when we get to a safe place, you can ask me, Kyle, why did we just run like through the forest? Like, with complete disregard of like, well, there was a bear or I stepped on a bee's nest, right? So there has to be that fluidity, like, yeah, trust, but also question, but also know that like you questioning me about running right now is actually going to result in a lot of damage. Like, I'm going to probably run and you're going to be like, Kyle, why are you running? I'm gonna be like, well, you can find out. Right. So I think, yeah, like in a team, especially in wilderness, especially in community, like we need, and I think that's why we really, both as individuals, we need to cultivate and recognize and become aware of what our gifts and passions are, so that when we come into community, we can offer those as much as possible. We do need to have some awareness and skill in other areas, right? Like if somebody's not there, like I need to be able to fill in. Like, okay, the architect didn't show up today. Does that mean we're not building a shelter? It's like, no, like I still need to know how to build a shelter, like fundamentally, right? So there needs to both be like that, I call it like empowered interdependence.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like, yeah, like we are interdependent on each other, but I'm also very much empowered in what I have to offer and what I would rather offer. And I recognize that I might need to do things I don't want to do in order to support the group ultimately.
Mm-hmm. I was thinking of earlier, you said you're talking about being alone, or like not alone in the woods. You're talking about being depressed, or if people kind of get stuck. I didn't write down the exact words you used. It was right in the beginning, but I was thinking of, oh yeah, you were talking about having meaning and purpose, actually, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And how it's important to have motivation, support, and grow. You need connections to be able to grow. That's what you were talking about, right?
Yeah.
So I was just thinking of this. It's a yoga thing. The malas, these like three, basically kind of wrapping up these three negative, maybe not negative, but like these traps that we can get stuck into as humans. And like one of the one major one is that you're alone. This trap of thinking that you're alone. And it's not true. It's untrue. But we kind of get stuck there and thinking that, and that just has a sequela of suffering, I guess would be the word they might use,
For sure.
Yeah. And then the next one is measuring. So there's a place for this, there's three, right? And the second one, this measuring, there's a place for it. But it can be like designing a structure. It's the thinking, it's a critical analysis. And there's a place for it. We need to measure. Like you want to measure your goals, you want to track your goals, you want to know what you're doing. But there can be a point where instead of being open or feeling the love or having a reciprocal anything, you're too stuck criticizing and looking for and trying to shape and mold. So that's this. Yes, those are the two, and the third is escaping me right now. I'll have to look it up. It comes back, but I just, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Suffering, the alleviation of suffering is And I think a lot of that comes like it's like a kind of like paradoxal, like accepting of the suffering is like the relief of suffering. And I think about like cold water. Okay, like this is gonna suck. Well, it doesn't actually suck that bad. And oh, like, okay, now like it used to suck, but now it feels good. Okay, like, well, I'm engaged in the like act of suffering. Um, yeah, just cultivating that like discomfort, like comfort and discomfort.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I like this. Someone uh said something like, you know how you can like learn to deal with stress in your life, or like the weight of stress in your life, and you're like, give me more, but you're not giving me more. You're like, I can handle more, I can handle more, I can work harder. Yeah, yeah. So I see I see that, like the embracing the suck, right? Or enjoying the, but this, what this person said to me was, actually you can have both. Like you can, you know how you can grow your capacity for whatever, like dealing with hard things, and be like,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm a hard ass, I can deal with hard things. You do the same thing with your capacity to feel joy and happiness. Like that's a
For
thing.
sure.
You can do that. You can have yeah. And I'm thinking about these ways that we suffer, like our emotions, like anger, sadness, and finding the balance between feeling them but not getting stuck on the chain, on the loop of the uh, um I definitely, I had a really clear, strong, um fast train, like a bullet train to anger, from the
Mhm.
from the reptile brain to the prefrontal cortex. I had a really serious highway. Like I could get there like really easy
Nice.
all the time. Sort of not, right? Sort of not, but I was stuck on that. That's just where I went. I didn't go to sad, never went to sad, just go right
Mhm.
to anger. And I think that with these ways that we suffer, we get stuck on that train. But it doesn't mean, yeah, I wasn't, it didn't allow me to feel sadness. I like feeling sadness now, but I never had to struggle with dealing with sadness. But I have people that are close to me. It's not that I didn't have sad things, but I have people that are very close to me that get stuck or have been stuck in the well that is sadness. And it's
Yeah.
different. It's totally different. Those trains are different. But there's a never ending supply of the big abyss of sadness, just because of all the people that came before us in life. But yeah.
Mm. Yeah, I'm just thinking of what is it? Um, can't think of it. There's a movie, it's a Disney movie, and it's kind of based on like parts work, like family systems, and there's a little sadness person inside of this person's head.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I was just like hitting the button,
Mm-hmm.
like, hmm.
I liked anger. Like I totally remember the first time that like I didn't um like I was grown. I was like, I was so privileged, really, like in a lot of ways. Like I could just express my anger. And like the first time I didn't actually express it was like, I remember it. I remember feeling this coursing through me and not being able to get it out. And I just think that's kind of like interesting how things worked out that way. But yeah, I don't know. I would always get it out. disallowed. It is.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of harkens back just to like having different tools, right? So like if you're in a situation in which you can't get it out in the way that you're used to, like how do you do that? Right. So it's kind of like I've been kind of thinking about this with like meditation, like, okay, people like light a candle and ring a bell and they sit on a comfy cushion and they play music and they turn down the lights and they're all alone. Like, cool. I'm glad that you have that and you can get into these like really calm meditative states in that situation. And how do you apply that skill, or how do you practice that skill in more chaotic, more dynamic situations, right? How do you find yourself using, a lot of people are like, they're like, yeah, like I meditate, and like I'm like, cool. Like, what do you get out of it? What do you do? How do you apply that right now in your day-to-day life? Right? Are you like, you're kind of an asshole, like you're yelling at that customer, but like you're gonna go home and meditate and it's all good? It's like, no, like you need to become aware of these things. And the most important part of any practice is transference. How does it transfer into not just one, but all areas of your life, right? Like if you practice parkour and you develop courage, well, do you have the courage to ask your boss for a raise? Do you have the courage to get out of a toxic relationship? Right? If you're practicing meditation and mindfulness, like, can you be mindful when you're speaking to your spouse or yelling at your child, right? Like, how do, like, oh, in yoga, like I'm totally centered and like focused on my breath. And then someone cuts you off in traffic and you're like flipping them off and yelling out the window. Like, cool, like, where's your center now? So in our isolated society, like we don't, I think the ability to develop a transference is more important than the development of any one skill. Like the ultimate skill is to transfer all skills to all areas. Like my martial art teacher was like, if you're only practicing this in class, you're missing out on 80% of your life. Like, like how are you applying this into your relationships, into your work, into your life, like in all aspects?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really easy for me personally to get into a pattern of, oh, how much do I want to divulge and do I need to? uh, a little afterthought. Uh, yeah, like being sweet to certain people outside of my close people. It's just, that's just been, I don't know. Yeah, it's hard to live with people, actually. Let's just blame it on that. It's hard to live with
For
people.
sure, very hard.
And I like to meet new people, so it's fun to meet new people. I like, that would be something I'm learning. That's just something that's easy for me to meet new people, be really nice. And I meet people, and and sometimes I'll know them on the outside for a while and they'll be like, you're really like that? Like they don't believe there's things that I've done in my home that I regret, and people don't believe it. They don't know that. They don't see, they don't um yeah, that's
Yeah, that's hard.
yeah, but um yeah, it's what I'm saying is kind of like, it's easier said than done,
For
like you're
sure.
saying.
100%.
you
Yeah,
know
for sure. The hardest thing you could ever do is do it.
Well, this is fun. I feel like we went over a lot of things. We didn't really talk like details on like I'm still curious. I really liked hearing about your the work you did at the survival school and the ways that it was um structured or measured or categorized.
Mm.
That yeah, like that that I thought it was cool.
Yeah, I mean, that's, yeah, it was one of the most like fascinating things. It's like, oh, like there's no grading system. We're just looking at how are these humans developing, right? Like, what's more important than that?
I guess, yeah, I guess so. You got to be fluid. You got to take the feedback from the people. You have to speak their language. It has to be what they're learning has to be relative to them. They have to be interested. And then there's the structure would be the core competencies. Yes, so it's okay to
Mhm.
have the values or the golden thread, the core competencies. That's, yeah, there's a place for those. And I
Oh, for
guess,
sure.
yeah, and I guess for me, I'm like developing my own programs. So that's where I get to decide what I'm going to keep and what I'm going to leave. And I always try to um, lead in the groups that I'm a part of. I try to if I have core competencies, but I also try to I always say take what you need and leave the rest.
Yeah.
But there's also like a moving on phase. So unless you've checked box these core competencies, then the next like okay, so like if somebody is wanting to do certain kinds of jumps or runs or things like that, and they want to do more, they should be able to explore on their own and do more. But if you're like in my case, if I'm trying to help them to not get injured and have the best stability, mobility on the bottom first. So at what point am I, no, you can't move on? No, who am I ever to say that? But
Yeah,
if
I
you're the
mean,
teacher and you're the leader and the guide, where do you draw that line? Okay, go ahead.
yeah, I think you know, that's part of the burden of being in a leadership position is potentially being able to recognize what they are unable to see.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're like, hey, I want to like do this thing, like I want to do this jump. And you're like, honestly, you're not ready for that jump. And maybe I know that you think you are, and you know, maybe you could do it, but I'm really concerned that if you can't, you're going to be severely injured.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Is that a risk that you're willing to take? And I'm like, yeah. Like, I'm going to take that risk. And it's like, yeah, I hear that. And as a group leader, that under the constraints that I'm working within, I can't allow you to take that risk. All right. And, you know, I want to, yeah, you're like, you know, trying to frame it in motivational frame. Like, I would like to see you be able to do these things that would both let you know and let me know that you are capable of accomplishing this like safely. Because there is just, yeah, maybe ideally, right, you just kind of let the kid like stick their finger in the outlet and you're like, yeah, like that sucked, huh? Like, I know. And it's like, depending on the level of risk and the level of responsibility, it's like, you really don't want to learn this lesson by breaking your leg, right? And you're like, maybe he's only going to learn this lesson if he breaks his leg. And you're like, well, I still can't let you do that, right? Just because of all of the things of being in a business, right? If it was like when I'm with my cousins, I'm like super loosey goosey. I'm like, yeah, like I'm going to give you the best information that I have, and I'm going to try to give you the best orientation. And ultimately, if you're going to do it, like you're going to do it, and I'm going to be here to, you know, carry you home if you break your leg. Like that sucks, but I'm willing to do that for you.
Yeah,
So
I see. Yeah, when I'm with, where to draw the line between friends, partners, like what is the role here? And I think, yeah, yeah. Like I have this structure a little bit, like Fridays are kind of my day off. So if I get together with anyone who is a client or a potential client, I'm just me. Like I'm not putting up there's no other thing.
yeah,
But if it's
that's
not on
good.
a Friday, then it's not, but that's just me trying to shape my shit right now. Like, and working with adults too in drug rehab and at the shelter. So they're partially, we have a captive audience that used to, like, I'm sorry, I'm all over the place. I used to work at a different facility for the same company with a different role, but they were forced to come to some of some of the things that I led. So that's captive audience, right? Now, nobody's really, I'm at a different facility. Nobody is forced to, but I'm in a medical role, so it's different. But then also, they literally give up their rights and they sign papers, but like legally, they're independent and they're adults, and it's so weird. And we're not a medical facility, but we are. And there's so many layers.
Yeah.
Um, and ultimately, it's health, it's their body, it's their decision. But there's also the whole level of denial and deep substance abuse. So how we're figuring out how to run that or not. But we have to call them out, but we also end up treating them like children in some ways, which I don't like. But they literally, they may walk out and die. Like the stakes just get higher and higher.
Yeah.
Or they are dying already, really.
And
And we're just a holding tank for them because they have nowhere else to go.
yeah, wow, that's really hard. I mean, yeah, it's kind of like, I mean, one thing that you said is like treating them like children. I'm like, I definitely, having worked with children was the best experience for working with adults. Like even at the EMP retreats, like I'm subtly like teaching or like treating you all like children, because it's just, I mean, because I treat children like I treat adults. Like I just treat people at all levels the same. Like I understand that everybody needs clarity and clarity on the boundaries and the rules and the constraints. The more clear I can be about what the constraints, what is allowed and not allowed in this environment, and the more clear I can be about the activity that we're participating in, and try to answer all of the questions in my framing so that they don't have to be asked.
Yeah.
And then I can add in little nuggets from my experiences. Hey, I notice when I do this thing, there's going to be somebody, I don't know who it is, but there's somebody in the group who's a little fucker, and you're going to try to break the rules. Like, that's okay if you want to do that. That's not what we're here to do. But if you're going to do that, that's where you're at. And I hope you find some time to check in with yourself about why you're doing that later. So that's where, like, again, as a facilitator, like a teacher means to like put information in. An educator means to educe, to draw information out, right? As a facilitator, I am not doing either of those things. I'm creating context and situation and constraints to allow people to teach and educate themselves in the given environment.
Mm-hmm.
And that helps me be a little bit more detached, right? I recognize that, like, I'm not going to reach everybody. And especially in like therapy, like my big like insight was to understand that like all I'm doing and all I can ever hope to do is to like plant the seed of possible change, as well as give like opportunity or environment for that seed to grow if that's what is being chosen. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if I want to grow grass, I don't like pull on the grass. I'm like, come on, grass, like grow, get taller, like pull. Like I gotta plant the seed, I gotta water the seed, and it just might not be sunny for like weeks. All right. And it might take my student months, days, years to understand what I was trying to offer them. And the more that I can be in that place, it's the more likely I get the results, and it's better for me because I was like so calm, like, no, this kid's not learning, he's not changing, like he's done. They're like, Kyle, like chill the fuck out. You've only been here for like 4 weeks. Like, if you get one to affect change in their life, like you're doing great. And I think that's kind of the like really important thing to again understand in all of those contexts, whether because I did therapy, I also did summer camps, I've also done like just backpacking trips, and in all of those situations I'm planting the same seed. All right, I'm offering opportunity, I'm offering the right type of environment for those things to grow, right? Like you got to put the lights in, you got to have all of the things before you can grow it, right? Can't just be like, all right, grow. Like, I need water. Okay, well, I need some like compost. Like, ooh, like, okay, like, what is this south facing? Is this north facing? Like, okay, like, and as a facilitator, you have the highest level of awareness. The participant has no idea what goes in to their experience, right? They have no idea how much planning, how much education, how much training, how much experience, how many failures, how many successes that you've had. But you have to both trust in yourself and hope that they trust in you. And that's through that rapport building, right? By being on the same level. Like I'm here too. Like I'm playing the game. Like when I did wilderness therapy, I was the only facilitator who would play the games with the kids. And that allowed me the level of rapport to like be an authoritative figure and to like get people to do things that needed to be done. So I'm like, yep, I'm friendly, I'm playing, I'm connecting, I'm out here hiking, I'm making the food, and like and I'm an authority figure, and you need to do what I say because my main job is to keep you safe. Right? So you have to like be able to just snap into that role. And
Mhm.
it's good to be friendly in
Mhm.
your rapport building, but
Mhm.
it's like, I'm not your friend.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I'm definitely learning it, especially with adults or people that are older than me, right? And to who am I? And I'm not an expert, right? I don't want to be an expert, but there's a certain spot where you have to be like, actually, I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Trust me here. You gotta come with me here. Just because, and I've had that even with co-workers, right? So like I'm trying to be humble. Like I try to defer a lot. It doesn't mean that I'm weak. Like
No.
it doesn't mean yeah. I'm just that's just how I'm trying to do things like, you know, but at the facility where I'm currently at, it's cool because each individual staff to some degree, because a lot of people that work there are in recovery, or like 60% of them are in recovery or have their own past criminal records, and everybody has a little bit of a different style
Yeah.
how they're relating, and then each individual has a response to a different style too. So
Yeah,
that's where
exactly.
there's never one answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, like something I heard in what you said was like I need to have the humility of a beginner, but I need to have the confidence of a master.
Hmm.
Like I recognize that I don't know everything, and I recognize that even what I know might change, but I also recognize that I know some shit. Okay? I've gotten results. I'm awesome. I made this thing fucking bomb. So that's a good start. And I
Hmm.
know some shit. And I know when I don't know. But that doesn't mean I don't know. Right.
Hmm.
So it's like those two things, like have been kind of like a big lesson for me is like, yeah, like I'm constant. And that's what I love about nature. Is like I'm just constantly being humbled. And at the same time, I'm also like alive, which means I clearly know how to do something. I know how to at least get food in my face.
I like we said employ and empower. I never heard that term
Mm.
before, but I like it. Yeah.
Yeah, because some people, they like I'm like this. I like to be told what to do.
Hmm.
I'm like, I would love to help you, and I have no fucking idea how to help you. But if you just tell me how I can help you, I will lovingly and happily do that task. Right? Like this is my like constant battle with my girlfriend. I'm like I don't know, like tell me, like you want me to chop onions? Like tell me, like Kyle, just go chop onion. Like boom, like I'm so happy to do it, but I don't know what needs to be done. Okay.
Hmm.
And I'm at least able to be vocal about that. Like I have enough self-awareness, but some people are not. So there is definitely like an art to bringing people into that. Like, hey, like I noticed that like you, like really like helping people. Like, would you mind helping me with this task? Like, I need you to like, can you go and get water? Can you help this person with this thing? Right.
Definitely a skill. Definitely a skill. Being able to get people to help that don't necessarily want to or think of it, or it's not a natural desire.
Yeah, like I'm doing that at EMP all the
Mhm.
time. It's like, all right, nobody wants to help with dishes. All right, how can I make it the most salient thing to everybody?
Mm, I don't think I don't have anything else on my agenda.
Cool.
I don't
Well,
know how to close it up. Didn't get that far yet to plan that out.
Yeah, you gotta get an intro, feedback,
Mhm,
intro, outro.
mhm. I got a lot of outros. I don't have one for this purpose.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I haven't put enough thought into it.
Yeah, I've gotten the opportunity to like be on other people's podcasts, so I don't have to think about it. But
Mhm. What do people usually say? What are like I haven't actually watched that many podcasts, really,
yeah,
actually.
the typical thing is kind of like awesome, thanks for being on the podcast. Where can people find more about you?
Definitely. Okay, okay.
Right. That's kind of the like classic.
Yeah. So I know that you're doing a fire back basics, um, some more survival teaching right now coming up soon. I know that you're doing that. And what else are you doing specifically? What are your upcoming projects?
Yeah, so really, yeah, so two things. Well, I'm doing, yeah, I have a primitive fire class happening in Port Townsend over here on the Olympic Peninsula. Going to teach people how to take sticks, rub them together, and create a coal. Like a lot of people are stoked about the Alone show. So we're going to teach people the ancient fire making skill of like hand drill and bow drill. And other than that, a lot of my attention is being drawn into the spring and the summer, doing retreats with Evolved Move Play. Those are really the two things on the horizon. I have basically a couple months of my own personal training time. So I'm just trying to take this time to like cultivate this meat suit mind,
Mhm.
so that when I step back into the role of being a facilitator, I am fresh on experiences and skills and excited to offer kind of the new teachings and learnings of the last year.
Are you gonna do? How about pro the projects with the camping in Washington? The
Yes.
are they filled or what's up with that? Where are you at with that?
Yeah, so I have a 27-acre property in Eastern Washington. We have 5 glamping sites, which are basically just like tents on platforms with beds and linens, and we provide, everything that you need to come out and just be. So yeah, if you had a crew and you wanted to like host a retreat there or something like that, we do that. And then yeah, otherwise people can just book us online and come out for however many nights and spend some time in the deep nature.
And what is the best way for people to find you?
The best way to find me is on Instagram. My Instagram is at Trotting Sparrow.
Right. And I will put that in. Put that in the description. That's what I'm
Cool.
supposed to do. A trotting sparrow.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Danielle. It's super
You're
good to
welcome.
hear about your stories and your experiences and the work that you're doing. And yeah, it sounds really rewarding. It sounds really challenging. It's definitely needed. And we need people like you, in the trenches.
I'm
Um,
trying to leave it. I've been trying to leave it for 3 years, but yep. Then I go ahead, just so you know.
yeah, no, and
My horizons aren't there.
no, and I mean, it's good to be there. And I think it'll really carry into the work that you are doing. Like, being a wilderness therapy guide was one of the best jobs and life experiences that I've ever had. And it allowed me to, bring that kind of framing and empathy and connection and awareness into the more recreational space to just recognize that people have trauma and grief and challenge. And having seen people go through that firsthand and having witnessed and experienced it, I have like a little bit more compassion and empathy as I wade into these other spaces. So I think I'm really excited to see how transforms and turns and how you can kind of imbue that into the spirit.
Okay, au revoir.
Awesome. Guten Nacht.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, have a good night. I'll talk to you later.
I hope so. Okay, bye.
Bye.